This is a Spanish Cetme. Now, this is probably my most badly assembled gun I own. It is right now, at least, I'm working on getting it fixed. Right now, it is a turd. Now, generally, I do not keep turds that I find and buy because life's too short. But this turd has a very fucking special secret. It makes it worth the trouble a little bit, at least to me. Might not for everybody. And I have debated selling it. Maybe get a PTR or a DSA FAL, because this feature makes it kind of worth a little bit more than normal. Alright, so starting out, what is a Cetme? Well, a lot of people will tell you it's a Spanish G3 copy. And they are completely fucking wrong, because it's not. In almost, well, it's a weird thing. Okay, so to be quick about it, World War II ends, Mauser employees, namely Vorgrimler was his last name, are out of a job. Germany is fucked, everything's destroyed, things are not good, we gotta leave, we gotta go find somewhere where they'll hire us to make guns, or to make military equipment even. So Vorgrimler goes to Spain, or not Spain, France at first. And he develops something, I think, called the CRM or CREM, Creme something 52, I want to say. And it was a very close amalgamation of features from the STG-44 and STG-45M, much like this gun is, because it's the same designers. Well, France looked at the rifle and they liked it. They did some trials with it, but ultimately it went nowhere. So Vorgrimler packed his bags and went to Spain, where Spain under Franco was fairly friendly with the old elements of the German government. So Spain was naturally a welcome place for lots of German industry leaders and stuff like that. And Spain needed, the Cold War was going on, and Spain wanted a modern NATO agreed caliber rifle. They wanted it to be semi or full auto. This one's semi, of course. Like all U.S. owned guns, unless you're like a rich boomer, then you can own machine guns that are made before 86, because we live on a horrible, horrible, horrible planet where nothing cool ever happens and everything that is cool is locked away behind a paywall. But anyways, yeah, basically. This gun is a kit build. So what does that mean? Well, go back, when this gun was developed, it's got features from the STG-44, STG-45M. Spain adopted the Model A version of this, which really looks like a STG-45. If you Google Cetme Model A, you can see that the lineage is obviously there. A lot of people will say the AK is a STG-44, 45 ripoff, but they're absolutely wrong and retarded. Internally, they're very dissimilar. This gun is literally the child, I would say, of the STG-45. So that's why these are very similar guns, the way those guns work. But regardless, Spain first went with a cartridge called 7.62 Cetme, and the idea would be it'd fire around a 140 grain bullet and be effective out to 1,000 meters, even on full auto, which is kind of a retarded goal. But I could see why starting out they would try something like that. And it didn't do well. Obviously it wasn't compatible with what. Hang on, I'll be right. Okay, now that I got the trigger pack disassembled, we can see what this thing's problem is. First off, guys, I want you to notice how crudely the semi-auto conversion was done. Typical century kind of bushwork. Or, we're just going to hire these inexperienced dudes with the grinders and tell them to go to town. It's like someone living in the friggin', woods, and they make a friggin' gun out of soda cans or something. It's the same kind of craftsmanship, bushwork. But yeah, you can see where it was crudely ground down. That's where the, I believe, full auto sear would have sat, and also the part that would let it accept a trigger pack that was full auto. That's gone. Also, the paddle mag release that would have been there is gone. They just left the push button, which fucking sucks, but it is what it is. This is the problem. Now, if you'll notice, on the other side of this gun, trigger pack, Jesus, you got this little spring here, and I don't believe the German one has a spring, and I think it's in the back, and it's better designed. This is a problem with like the Spanish trigger packs. This little fucking thing, just if it gets bent, like you can tell it is, if it gets bent or disaligned or anything, it fucking stops working. And that's not the worst thing. The worst thing is this. When they did this, or they set this up in a vise, you can see between the hammer and the wall, they bent the ever-loving fuck out of the frame of this trigger pack. And it interferes with the ejector. And it doesn't let this spring, which, I'm sorry, over here. It doesn't let this spring, even if this spring is working fine, it does not let it fucking do anything now. See how it gets stuck? And there goes the fucking pin to the lever. That's fine. It's right here. You can see the pin. But yeah, so what's going to end up happening, and why is it working fine for the time being? Well, essentially, when the bolt slams back, it kicks up the ejector, which kicks the case out of the gun. The spring is supposed to pull it down so the bolt doesn't hit this bar with like full friggin' force while it's like maybe in an unoptimal position. So yes, it is working for the time being, but what is going to happen is over time, through thousands of rounds probably, this little bar is going to get beat the shit out of itself because this gun is very violent. Any roller delayed blowback gun is pretty violent unless you're dealing with like an MP5 or something. Or, an SP5 H&K semi-auto import or whatever. Or a PTR9, whatever. This is going to eventually break if I don't do something about this. And replacing this whole thing is like the smartest thing, and just redoing the semi-auto work. Or fucking buying. Somebody was making US-made semi-auto trigger groups, which were pretty nice. And I want to say they were going to make them for around $150, which if that's the case, I'm just going to throw this whole fucking thing out and put a completely new... Because, yeah, this is some crude work, conversion work, and it's kind of sad. It's a good historical gun. I just hate that it's got problems like it does. Occasionally, because of how this is bent, it'll get out of alignment with the bolt. And you can kind of tell where it's beat the shit out of it, the tip there. Let me see if I can get the focus on that. It might not focus. Maybe if I move further back. But you can tell there's some wear and denting on the edge there. So eventually that's going to cause problems. And it did cause a malfunction. But it was like one malfunction out of 900 rounds I've shot through it. So what are my opinions on this thing? Well, if I paid what Century wants for the C308s for this, I would be pretty fucking angry. But I didn't. And I gave, I believe, $480 for this in 2019 at a pawn shop I found it at. And for that price, yes, it's kind of a piece of shit that I'm slowly patching together into making it function correctly. But on the same time, I've got a cool NATO semi-auto battle rifle for $480 that I'm slowly... I mean, I probably put about $700 into it by now. But still, that's more... That's cheaper than, like, the worst PTR 308s. And I've heard, like, some of them have had problems recently with fucking cracking bolt heads, which is very concerning. Because PTR is usually a stand-up company. But, yeah... if you do get one of these, be sure to very, very thoroughly inspect it. Check the bolt gap if you can. It's very important on roller delayed blowbacks. It's almost like the headspace, how important the headspace is on like AKs and ARs and such. So do that. Make sure your trigger pack's functioning as best you can tell. And do not overpay. And that's most importantly. You can actually get Cetme kits minus the barrel because, of course, we can't get the fucking barrels anymore because the ATF decided that wasn't cool in 2005. Uh, so you have to get a U.S. barrel, and that adds on to the cost. And the U.S. barrels might not be quite as good, stuff like that. They're button cut. I'm sure they're not cold hammer forged, which just means you'll get less barrel life. Probably get a little more accuracy, to be honest, but a little bit less life, a good bit less life actually. I think non-chrome lined button cut 308 barrels last, oh, 7,000, 8,000 rounds, which seems like a lot, and that is a lot for 308. You know, if you can afford to shoot that, you can obviously buy another barrel. But it's neat to have the 30,000 round life cold hammer forged barrel these were originally issued and made with. And of course, the front trunnion is Spanish and forged. Of course, Century did not install this receiver right either. That's another thing. You should be able to see the pin about right, I believe, there or here. And of course, they covered it up. The barrel is pressed and pinned into the trunnion and then welded. And then the receiver is wrapped around it and then welded. But they just welded over where the pin would be, and they didn't care. So if you were going to like re-receiver this, it'd be a huge pain in the ass to find that pin to drive the barrel out. But you'd have to do it. And I might eventually do that when I get more money and get this whole thing, get this gun built into a respectable way it should look. I could go into the history on these guns. Maybe I will a little bit. The designer was a ex-Mauser engineer named Ludwig Vorgrimmler. He was German. Of course, he was a Mauser engineer. And after World War II, anybody associated with the old government, it wasn't advisable probably for them to stick around Germany. So they either went to other places in Europe, the Soviet Union, the U.S., or Spain, because Spain was kind of neutral in World War II. They just had their civil war, so they had no capability to join the fighting on either side. So they kind of mostly sat out. And yeah, so they let Ludwig Vorgrimmler work in their factory. They established Cetme, which stands for like the Center of Special Technology Studies in Spanish, I believe. And he designed a prototype Cetme A based off the STG 44 and 45M. And he did design the STG 45M, which was like the last ditch mainline German, I guess, intermediate rifle in the final days of World War II. I think only like 3 or 4 got made, so it's not like it's a mass production thing. But the Cetme is essentially that, beefed up in some ways for the larger cartridge. But the Cetme A's were in an intermediate cartridge too. Spain wanted their own 7.62 intermediate cartridge for a while, and that went nowhere. And they eventually just kowtowed to the U.S. demand, like all of NATO did, and chambered this gun for 7.62 by 51 NATO, commonly interchanged with 308 in America. And I know there's some debate about that too. I've shot both types of ammo through this gun. With the only thing I can say is 308 seems to eject a little more violently, which is expected because it's generally going to have a slightly higher pressure in some rounds. So yeah, that's what I think of this Cetme. If you want one, be sure to do your homework and make sure you're not getting something that's got a lot of problems that you can't handle. I'm okay with this because by trade, I kind of deal with this kind of work. And I'm not a gunsmith, but I am into mechanical engineering. And yeah, it's all right gun. 5 out of 10. It'd be nice if Century didn't touch it. I'm sure if Century didn't have anything to do with it, it would work fine. I'm a little hard on Century. They did give us the Wasser, and for a while they were a good alternative to expensive guns that nobody could afford back in like 2009, 2010. They did fuck up some good kits, though. Good God, they fucked those Tantals up. But yeah. Yeah, and I'll try to get back and do some more content on the channel. I can review more guns. This is just a few of some weird ones people don't see that often, I guess you could say. They're not AR-15s. So yeah, cool little battle rifle. Well, not little. It weighs like fucking 10 pounds, and it's pretty long. I wish it had a longer barrel. That's another one of the complaints. It's only got a 17, I think, .9-inch barrel. And that kind of makes 308 perform a little poopy, but what are you going to do?